I drove 2 hours through darkening pines, up the familiar road that always smelled like rain, only to stand on my own wooden porch and hear my son say, "You can't come in. This is their house now." I didn't argue. I set my canvas bag down, looked at the lake lying flat as glass, and let a slow smile settle. People mistake that smile for surrender. It isn't. It's the moment I choose tools, talk or build. I'm a builder. I choose a blueprint. Wind came off the water with the resin-sweet bite of pine and damp boards. The reading chair where my wife used to sit had someone else's weight in it now. The wool throw Carolyn knitted was askew on the armrest, moved by a hurried hand. A wine glass sat straight on the cedar coffee table, no coaster. A ring bleeding into wood I had sanded myself. Those are the small details that tell an older man he's been erased from his own home. I said evenly, "I drove 2 hours to the lake. I'd like to come in." My son didn't blink. "Not today. We've got plans." I nodded. Sometimes the first step in drawing a boundary is taking one quiet step back. The drive to the city is shorter when you don't talk. I cut the radio, let the engine hum like a steady hand on a hammer. At home, I didn't turn the lights on right away. I sat in the leather chair in my study and looked at the photo of my wife on the shelf. Clear view sunset had turned her hair to copper wire in that picture. 3 years since she passed. I kept my son close the laziest way possible. I said yes, reached for my wallet, smiled. Turns out, that's the fastest way a man loses himself. The phone buzzed. A short, cold text. "The lake house will be theirs permanently. Don't come back." I read it twice, set the phone down, poured a black coffee. In my trade, before the first stone goes down, you learn 3 things. Don't negotiate from desperation. Control the information. Own the timing. At my age, you don't win by shouting. You win on paper. I flipped open a notebook and wrote one line. Saturday, 2 p.m. That was the deadline my son had set for me. When someone else drops an hour on your life, you draw a plan on it. I called Marcus, the lawyer who's kept my business out of ditches for 2 decades. His voice was the same, clean, spare, nothing extra. Bring every document, title, taxes, insurance, log calls, save texts, and Richard, date and time, anything that matters. I said, all right, feeling my feet find concrete again. Next morning, I put on the navy sport coat I used to wear to bids and closings. Not for show, just to tell myself the nature of the work ahead. The office smelled like leather and old ink. Marcus leafed through the stack. Deed, receipts, a will still in revision. He marked in blue. Sole ownership clear. No liens, no encumbrance. Good, he said. The law is on your side. But be ready for the psychology. They'll push. You stand still. I smiled. I pour foundations, Marcus. Standing still is a specialty. On the way home, I stopped at Darren's place, my neighbor who knows smart homes like I know rebar. I didn't tell him everything. I only said, I need the house to say one simple sentence when uninvited people cross the line. Leave the property. He angled a smile. Done. We weren't doing anything reckless. Just sensible features any decent security system uses. Clear voice notices, a little lock delay, motion triggers, alert lighting. I didn't need to terrify. I needed the house to speak at the right time, in the right tone. Friday evening, I stood in the doorway at Clearview, and looked into the same tidy living room as always. The Santa Fe rug Caroline and I chose still ran true with the pine floor. I walked a loop, checked each window, each hinge. There were no traps in that house, only legal reminders and a bit of engineering that would make a person who doesn't belong feel out of place. I locked the door and listened to the lake breathe. Old men know what needs fixing isn't always wood and nails. Sometimes it's the boundary map gone faint. Saturday. I sat in my study in Phoenix, steam lifting off the coffee, the clock crawling toward 1:45 p.m. I didn't go to the lake. I didn't need to. I opened the basic door camera. Every home owner should have one. 2:02. An SUV slid into the gravel. 4 shapes. They came up the steps like they were returning from a long vacation. A copied key ticked in the lock. The door opened. I heard shoes on the rug, a woman talking dinner, chair legs walking into wood. I let them move an hour. The last courtesy for people who don't know how courtesy works. Night dropped. 10 o'clock. The house was so quiet you could hear the refrigerator breathe. I set the cup down. One small tap. A calm, recorded voice, the sort you hear in airports, spoke into the rooms. "You are not the owner of this property. Please leave." Hall lights moved to an alert cadence. Kitchen water opened for 30 seconds. The same kind of pressure test any plumber runs. No screaming. No spooks. Just the house saying, "This place is not yours." I watched the older man in their party raise a hand to his eyes and turn toward his wife. I watched my son brace on the handle like wrist strength can torque the law. There's a built-in delay on the smart lock. Half a minute, long enough to learn a door opens because the owner chooses it, not because you pull hard. The lock let go. They spilled into night with the look of people who had learned one lesson. Quiet returned. I raised the cup and took the last swallow. This wasn't victory. This was a phase. Next morning, the phone rang. My son's voice had a thin, sharp edge. "What did you do?" The house went crazy. Lights, water, voices. They were terrified. I kept my tone level. "Modern systems glitch. Call a tech." He went silent for a beat, then dropped his voice. "I underestimated you." I smiled. For years, it wasn't his underestimation that hurt. It was my choice to live lower, thinking I could lift him by stooping. Same result. A father becomes a walking wallet. That evening, they came to my door. No in-laws, just the two of them. The ultimatum was the old kind. Give us a house, or you'll lose visits, holidays, whatever grandchildren appear. A man my age knows there are losses you take to avoid bigger ones. I said slow and steady. You have the right to choose what kind of man you become. I have the right to draw a boundary. No debate. No sermon. Just a job description reset. City night fell clean. I spread paper on the desk. I'd been telling myself keeping the house meant keeping my wife. Turns out keeping a memory doesn't always mean clutching an object. Monday morning, I sat across from Marcus again and said the sentence men speak only after they've stared down their oldest fear. I don't want the house in my name anymore, but I want to be able to go there, sit with the water, and say her name in my head. Marcus lifted his brows. The options stood up in his mind like columns. Move it into an irrevocable trust, or donate it outright to an organization that means something, and reserve lifetime access. The name came as simply as wind on a porch. Veterans Rest, the place Caroline used to ask me to drive her to for volunteering. A house can be a breathing room for people who carry a whole battlefield behind their ribs. When my pen left the last line of the gift agreement, I knew the wall was up. Not brick, paper. A paper wall looks thin until you run into it. 2 days later, the local paper ran a piece. Lakeside Villa donated for veterans' retreats. The photo caught the porch planks and a blade of sun on the water. I sat in my study and took up my wife's picture. "Would you like this?" I asked the room. The silence of the dead is its own music. It doesn't answer. It just makes the space around the living fit right again. The final meeting happened in a lemon-polished conference room. My son sat across from me, jaw locked. My lawyer slid one sheet forward. Irrevocable. Next to it, a letter. No trespass, no harassment. I looked at the boy who used to drop a baseball and wait for me to crouch beside him to fish it out from under the car. He looked at the page like it was a language he'd never studied. "You'd give it to strangers instead of your son?" he asked, voice scraped raw. "I'd give it to people who respect what a home is," I said. It was the first thing I'd told him in years that didn't need fixing after. He didn't slam the door when the meeting ended. He just pushed his chair back too hard, the legs squealing a protest across the carpet, and walked out with Madison a step behind. The in-laws followed, shoulders squared the way people square them when a room has shrunk their options to a single hallway. Marcus gathered the papers with his usual care. "You executed cleanly," he said. "Paper walls," I answered. "They look thin until a man walks into one." He almost smiled. I didn't go home right away. I drove the long way, let the road cut between warehouses and ball fields and the kind of empty lots that wait for a future. When I reached my street, the porch light was on because I leave it on. Caroline started that habit. "A home shouldn't greet you in the dark," she'd say. The house was quiet. Quiet the right size for one person. I poured water, stood at the sink, and let the silence settle like dust after a job. That was the feeling. Post-work quiet. Not victory. Not gloating. Just the click you hear when something finally seats into place. News travels faster than good manners. By noon the next day, the Veterans Rest page posted a photo. Program director on my porch. The lake behind her turned bright by a sky that likes that kind of thing. The caption thanked a donor whose name I didn't need big. A local paper called. I didn't pick up. Gratitude is better received in person, I've learned, or not at all. The call that did come was from Ethan. His voice had lost the blade. It sounded tired, not the tired that makes a man sleep, the tired that makes him pace. "So that's it," he said. "You'd rather give it away than give it to me." I sat down. Chairs do a job for us when knees can't. "No," I said. "I'd rather put it where it can't be used as leverage. You tried to turn a house into a handle. I took the handle off." Breath on the line. "You destroyed this family," he said. "No," I said, soft, because truth delivered soft can still hold. "I enforced a boundary. Families survive boundaries. They die without them." He didn't answer. The call clicked into dial tone like a level tapping a nail head. A week later, Marcus called to say the county record was fully indexed. Done is a small word that holds a lot. I drove to Clearview in the afternoon, the hour Caroline liked because The light goes copper through the trees, and the water holds it like a mirror that wants a second look. On the porch, a woman waited, hair pinned back, clipboard in hand, and a steadiness in her eyes. "Mr. Hale, I'm Dana, program director." We shook hands. It was a handshake without sales in it. Relief travels that way, too. "I thought we'd keep the dedication small," she said as we stepped inside. "This place is yours to visit when you need it. When our clients come, it will be theirs in a different way." She didn't say rules. She said ways. That matters. We walked the rooms. I told her where morning light landed in winter. I told her the kitchen drawer that sticks when the barometer falls, and the thing you have to do with your wrist to make it behave. She took notes like a steward, not a guest. "We'll bring a small group next month," she said. 5 couples to start, space to breathe. A quiet week where nothing is expected of them. "That's what this house knows how to do," I said. We stood at the window that looks out on the dock when tires rolled on gravel. You can know your own driveway by sound. "Expecting someone?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I expected this eventually." The knock was quick and too heavy, like a man who doesn't trust doors to open for him unless he shoves. I opened it because I chose to, not because a fist asked. My son stood on the threshold, eyes a little too bright for daylight. He looked past me into the living room that had once talked to him in a voice not his own, and back again to my face. "Is it true?" he asked. "About the veterans." "It's true," I said. "It's done." He swallowed and cleared his throat. His voice found a lower gear. I said some things. "You did?" I said. He tried again. "I thought if I pushed hard enough, you'd go back to the version of you from 3 years ago. The one who mistook kindness for surrender," I said. He flinched, not because I said it, but because it had been in his head already. "Do you hate me?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I stopped letting you make me small." He nodded. One of those nods men give when there's a rightness they don't yet know how to carry. Behind me, Dana cleared her throat gently, a reminder that the house wore a new job now. I stepped a little aside. "From now on," I said, "if you want to come here when it's not in use, you speak to Dana. It's her schedule." It wasn't a jab. It was the new map laid flat. He blinked. He's quick. He got it. "Fair," he said. He held up a cardboard carrier. "I brought coffee. Don't know if you still drink it this late." "Depends on the company," I said. We sat. No speeches, no apologies by paragraph. We talked about a rental with a bad water heater and the way some faucets rattle in older copper. It was small talk, the honest kind. The kind you lay down first or gravel before a pour. When he stood to go, he said, "You look better than the last time I saw you." "I am," I said. He left. No hug. No promise to call. That was fine. Let bridges have their own weight and no banners. The first snow came early. Phoenix keeps its own calendar, but Clearview listens to a different bell. I drove up on a gray morning with a thermos and a stack of old photos, because sometimes a man needs to move pictures from one box to another to understand a thing is not lost, only sorted differently. The place sounded different now. Before, the quiet had been the kind that waits to see who claims it. Now it was the kind that belongs to the room itself. I poured coffee into the chipped mug Caroline liked, the one that doesn't match anything and refuses to care. I walked to the dock. Cold came up through the boards, honest as numbers in a ledger. Across the lake, a thin chimney thread hinted at someone else making warmth. Tires on gravel again. I turned. The truck was older, paint tired, but willing. A broad-shouldered man climbed out with a careful way of walking that said he'd learned to keep his weight where it belongs. "You Hale?" he called. "I am," I said. "Ray Torres," he said when he reached the dock. "My unit served with a guy named Price. He said this place was coming. Said it might help." His voice didn't carry pity, just coordinates. "You're the donor." I nodded. "You served with Price?" "2 tours," he said. He looked at the water the way a man looks at a thing that once fooled him and won't again. Still water messes with your head, looks safe as a road, then isn't. Then, snap, you're under. He nodded once. "This feels like the other kind, deep and honest. You know it's not a road. You stand anyway." We didn't shake hands again. We didn't need to. He left a few minutes later, and the gravel quieted at the curve. Later that afternoon, the sound I knew came back. The newer SUV, the better engine. It idled for a breath like the driver might think better of it, then didn't. Ethan came up the steps slower this time, hands in his coat pockets, eyes on the grain. "You busy?" he asked. "Busy enough," I said, "but not too busy for a coffee." We sat in the living room with the fire going. He didn't come to undo papers. He came to move a different kind. "I told Madison I needed space," he said. The way he said it told me the space had already opened. She called it leaving, so I guess I left. He didn't ask for the house. He didn't ask for money. He asked for nothing, which is how you know a man might be ready to ask better later. "I'm sorry," he said finally, "for the way I spoke, for using Mom's voice like a lever." I didn't rush to answer. Seeds don't sprout faster because you stare at dirt. I poured coffee into 2 old mugs and set one in front of him. "If you want to come back here when it fits Dana's calendar," I said, "you ask her. She'll tell me when it makes sense." His eyebrows ticked. He nodded. "Fair," he said again, and the words sat between us like a small level that finally reads true. He stood at the door. "You look steady," he said. "I am," I said. He left. Snow came harder that night, tapping the windows the way winter likes to ask if the latch is honest. The next day, Dana's first group arrived. 5 couples. No speeches at the door. She greeted them by name. Laughter started low in the main room, the kind men make when they're learning how to aim it again. I stayed out of the way, walked the perimeter like I always do, checked the dock ropes, ran a hand along the rail. The house didn't need me to defend it. Paper did that, and purpose. A man can stand down when the work is out of his hands and into a form that holds. On my last evening that week, I stood on the porch while the room behind me filled with the good noise. The lake was winter steel under a tired sun. I took up my phone and typed nothing. Men my age learn there are messages you answer by how you live, not what you send. When the cold finally reached the place it needed to, I went inside, shut the door, and heard the sound every builder knows, the small, final close that says it fits. The plaque came on a clear day that pretended to be spring even though the shore ice still clung to the shadow side of the dock. Donna carried a small velvet pouch and a screwdriver in the back pocket of her jacket. Understated, she said, taking the brass plate out and laying it on my palm. The letters were cut clean and deep, given in memory of Caroline Hale. May this house be a quiet kind of healing. We stood in the entry where the wood darkens a shade from the tread of years. Dinah held the plate against the jamb, leveled it with a practiced eye, and marked the holes with a pencil. The drill murmured. 2 screws answered with that tidy friction sound only wood and metal can make together. When she stepped back, the plate sat there like it had always known the way. She would have liked that, I said. She sounds like someone who knew how to leave a room better than she found it, Dinah said. She did, I said, and touched the corner of the plate once, the way a man does when he wants the brass to know it's welcome. I spent the morning doing the useful small things, sanding a nick out of a stair tread, rubbing a little oil into the banister where hands land, testing the latch that never loved cold. The couples were out walking the shoreline, their boots making that crisp snow on pine needle sound, the one that keeps a man moving, because it says he's moving. Laughter rose and fell inside, not loud, more like people remembering the scale of their own voices. After lunch, I took the photos I'd brought and sat at the kitchen table. Caroline at the dock in a sweater that never made her warm, but made her smile warm. Caroline holding a too big mug with steam on the lens. Caroline, standing in the doorway, the year we replaced the screen. I didn't arrange them chronologically. Grief doesn't file itself by date. It files by weight. I taped 2 to the inside of the pantry door, where only a man hunting for sugar would bother to look. You can have private corners inside a house that now serves many, little alcoves, where a life nods to itself and keeps going. In the late afternoon, as the couple settled into their rooms, and one of the men coaxed a fire like a skill he wanted to still own, my phone buzzed. Not a call. A text that took its time to arrive. I'll be in touch when I'm ready to talk like a son. No name. It didn't need one. The line had arrived days earlier, but a man sometimes needs to reread a sentence to decide if it's meant for the person he is now or a previous edition. I set the phone face down. Some messages you answer by living long enough in the next right thing. That night I stayed in the small back bedroom we used to save for winter friends, the one with the window that frames the last pine before the shore drops. The house made its honest small sounds. Heat stepping in the baseboards, wood answering the temperature's question, the lake shifting its shoulders. I slept the way a man sleeps after he lets his hands return to work they know, and his mind to a job with edges. Morning came with a flat gray sky and the promise of warmer hours. I took coffee to the porch and watched a pair of mallards stitch their way across the close water. Footsteps behind me. Ray Torres eased into the chair to my left. He sat without asking because some places declare the chair beside you an open seat as long as the talk that fills it knows its weight. Good plate, he said, chin toward the door. She earned it, I said. He blew on his coffee and nodded at the lake. We did a fire circle last night, he said. No big speeches. Just a minute per person to say one thing that followed us home and one thing we'd rather leave here. He turned the cardboard cup in his hands. I left a noise, he said. Brought a different one back. What noise? The one that says if a good thing happens, a bad thing is due. He smiled without showing teeth. Figure I can let that pay rent somewhere else a while. Fair, I said, and let the word sit between us like a tool passed hand to hand. When he went in for breakfast, I stayed. The lake had started to mirror a milder sky. I thought about the young version of me who would have rushed to fill this time with tasks, and the slightly less young version who would have tried to buy peace for other people with this house. Both men meant well. Both men were wrong in ways that looked like generosity and felt like depletion. You get older and learn the shape of a boundary isn't a wall you hide behind. It's a line you draw so the door you open means something. People hear advice easier when it comes with an example they can test. Before I left Clearview that week, I wrote 3 simple rules on a paper Dinah keeps on a clipboard for house notes. The practical kind that sits beneath "Do not plug in the space heater and toaster on the same outlet." 3 boundary rules for men who like things you can use. Write, keep, timestamp. If it matters, put it where paper can hold it. Texts saved, emails archived, dates and minutes on a notepad. Not because you plan to fight, but because you plan not to. Paper keeps a man from having the same argument twice. Title beats opinion. A deed, a will, a donor letter, a trust. These aren't romantic, but they are kind. They stop conversations that eat families. Get your documents right while you still feel generous, not after you feel cornered. Give to what outlives you. If a thing becomes a wedge, either fix the wedge or change the thing. Sometimes you keep it and narrow access. Sometimes you place it where it works for good and reserve a small right to visit. Purpose is a stronger lock than any cylinder. I left the rules there in simple language because useful things should read like a wrench's instructions, not a sermon. Dana added "thank you" at the bottom in her tidy print, and that was enough. On my last morning before the drive south, Dana walked me through the schedule for the next 3 months. 2 groups a month, 1 week empty between them to let the house breathe. "It's funny," she said as we stood at the door with the plaque. "People think healing is a big feeling. Mostly it's a small sequence done on repeat. Safe bed, hot coffee, a walk, someone to listen for 5 minutes without fixing you." "That's building," I said. "Repetition, true as level." She smiled. "You builders say it prettier than you admit." I put my hand flat on the jamb beneath Caroline's name. "Do what you need to," I said. "If something breaks, call me. If nothing breaks, call me anyway sometimes." "We will," Dana said. "The road away from the lake feels different when your leaving isn't a retreat." Pines made their old green hall, and the shoulder snow showed its last crust. I didn't turn on the radio. I let the engine name the miles and kept the corner of my mind on Phoenix. The steady light, the study chair molded to my back, the photo that now fits a different frame in me. Back in the city, I set a fresh copy of the deed transfer and the donor letter in my file drawer. I slid the drawer shut and felt that satisfying hidden click. Not victory, I thought. Not finality. Something else. Weight redistributed. I cooked a simple dinner. Eggs, toast, tomatoes in a pan just long enough to go sweet. I washed the plate, dried it, and put it back because a man should leave his own kitchen ready for his next self. I sat in the leather chair and let quiet take its rightful size. The porch light burned because it should. the phone face down because it could. The lake was 200 miles away, which is to say, no distance at all when a place has been set in its proper work. Sometime after 9, a message lit the glass. Coffee next week? No angles. Just me. I didn't answer, not because I wouldn't, but because haste had never served us well. I turned the phone over and watched my window hold the city's small stars, the ones we make when we wire a place to glow at the right moments. I closed my eyes and thought of the dock, of the brass, of a woman who never loved plaques, but loved sentences that landed true. A quiet kind of healing. Some stories end with trumpets. This one ended with hinges that no longer stick and a door that closes the way it should. Firm, clean, final enough to be trusted and open enough to be used. If you've listened this far, you know what I learned. A house is only a home when the person holding the key knows where the line is, and a family is only a family when it learns to honor the line, not test it. I'm an old builder. I believe in level and plumb, and I believe in paper, the kind you sign with a steady hand when your voice wants to shake. The lake will have other mornings. The couples will go home with different noises in their pockets than the ones they carried in. My son will find the word he's reaching for. I will drive up again when the calendar says space has been made, and I will sit where the light lands in winter and let it land. No conquest, no confetti, just work that's been done and keeps doing itself, quiet as a good wall and kind as a door that opens for the right reasons.